Now, Liz Truss has promised to act quickly on tackling cost of living issues, but she hasn't revealed any details as of yet, including during that 7-week campaign. What does that tell us?
I think the crisis, the problems are deteriorating, getting worse, not only for the United Kingdom, but for the whole of Western Europe, as the war in Ukraine drags on and Russia takes various actions. Clearly, the Treasury officials will have been preparing briefings for the incoming Prime Minister. She may have already been party to some, that's quite often the case, but they will have been briefing both candidates. And we know that she's intending to make a statement by the end of the week, outlining her plans.
Now, trust is always an issue with politicians, but many have been questioning Liz Truss's trustworthiness up to this announcement today. In 2016, she was firmly in the Remain camp of the Brexit referendum, but over time became a staunch supporter of Brexit. She began her political career against the monarchy, but is now a poster child for conservative values everywhere. Can Truss be trusted?
I think the answer to that is yes, as long as any politician of whatever political persuasion can actually convince the voters, the public at large, that the reason they've changed their views are coherent and not just political opportunism. And actually, one of the things that she's done very successfully during this long campaign to become the new Prime Minister is that where she has changed her views, she has a clear, thought-out reason for having done so. And therefore, what she did 6-7 years ago or 16 or 20 years ago won't matter. It's whether the voters and the public at large believe her when she says, this is the plan that I've decided on.
Do you believe that Liz Truss will be different enough to separate herself from the legacy that was left behind by Boris Johnson?
There's nobody else like Boris, and therefore we will be dealing with a different Prime Minister, a different style. I think foreign governments, whether it be the Australian government or the American government or whatever it may happen to be, I don't think the direction of travel will change that much. But what we will actually see is a degree of consistency, which I think other governments may find easier to deal with than Boris Johnson's approach to life and to international relations.
One of her next steps now will be to form cabinet, and that includes MPs who stood with Rishi Sunak instead of her. What obstacles do you see standing in her way here?
I think the vote does have clear implications for Liz Truss. Because it is a relatively narrow margin, it's narrower than was predicted by the polls. It does impose on her a burden to bring two sides of the party together and therefore involve more members of Rishi Sunak's campaign team in cabinet to show that she is determined to reunite the party after this protracted election. And that is going to be quite a difficult task.
What do you think the last few years have done for Labor's chances of being elected at all? The Tories have obviously been in power now for more than a decade. The last 3 years were plagued with quite a few scandals. Is the opposition making any headway here?
It's made some headway in recent weeks as the Tory party has gone through all these contortions. But there's no indication to me, as somebody who spends a lot of time analysing the opinion polls, that the people who are now saying they might vote Labour have absolutely decided to do so. So it's very much in Liz Truss's hands to recoup those people, some of those people who voted Conservative in 2019, to actually vote for her in an election. And our next election is not due for 2 years, so she's got plenty of time to rebuild the position. And the Keir Starmer, the Labour leader, he's proved he's not Jeremy Corbyn, but he hasn't convinced many voters that he is actually clearly somebody they are determined to support.
You mentioned Boris Johnson before, no one else being like him. What do you believe is next for Boris Johnson now? Do you see him sticking around? What's he like? What role is he likely to play now for the next 2 years until the next election?
All the indications are that he will stay as an MP. There has been conjecture as to whether he would not. So there's unlikely to be a by-election there. But if we all know Boris well enough. He will go out onto the speaking circuit and write. After all, he was a professional journalist before he came into politics. And I think the chances are that he'll make a fair amount of money out of doing both speaking and writing.
Do you see any scenario where he would return to the top job? There's been all these whispers about, if things go really pear-shaped over the next couple of years, they could call him back into the fray. Do you believe that that's a likely scenario?
No, I don't. I think that's highly improbable. And as you said in your intro, he has already issued a tweet telling members of the Tory party to get in behind Liz Truss, to support her and work with her to face the challenges we have at the moment, but also leading into the next general election.
Lord Robert Hayward, we really do appreciate your time this evening. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you.